Well Spoken presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, Reggie Key, and today's guest is my man, Fernando Leonard. Fernando, what's happening with you?
What's going on, everybody? How you doing?
We are all good, man. Where you filming from, man? Is that the man cave?
So I'm in the man cave. I'm out here in Maryland, the DMV, and I'm in the man cave that I built just for purposes like this to be able to talk, and I can't wait.
Being uninterrupted. That's what's up, man. It's good to see it on the inside. I've seen pictures of it, but this is my first time getting a real glimpse. The next time I'm home, the next time I'm in Maryland, I need an invite to get up in there.
You got an invite whether you're in Maryland or not. It's wide
Hey,
open for you. We got chairs. We got everything.
all right. Same goes for my little add-on to our house that we built last year too, though. All
Absolutely.
right. Cool. So let's get right into it, man. I've had you in mind for a while because you have very interesting opinions and very thought-provoking ideas and stances on things, and I think this will fit very well into the conversation that we're going to have about genius. So my first question to you that starts everything off is, Fernando, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
I do consider myself to be a genius.
Okay.
Not in, Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, not in the way how most people may think of genius. Well, I'm making an assumption on what most people think. My genius, I feel, comes from different qualities that I bring as far as my leadership capabilities, motivational capabilities, when I choose to use them, and other attributes that I've gained either from someone or honestly from my parents.
Okay. Now you're already starting off really well because most people say no. And I'm cool with that because that's the whole reason why I wrote this book, why I had these workshops, because not many of us, there are not more of us who understand that you do have something that is genius about you. It's just not it's just not how it's normally packaged. And so I like that you're saying, hey, look, I have a very particular skill set, right? That gives me access to something that other people don't have access to. Right. And that's basically what I want to get into and get around. It doesn't surprise me that you already know it. I heard you say that you said, what did you say? You said, I motivate people when, what did you say? Like when I
Uh,
want to, or
when I want to, when I feel like it,
when you feel like it.
when
Hey
I
man, I
choose to
feel like
motivate myself.
you motivate people regardless, man. It's just, are you motivated? Where are you motivating them towards? Are you motivating them towards the right or the left? It doesn't matter. I feel like you're always leading somebody somewhere. I mean, I see it all the time on Facebook. You have this capacity, you have this ability to kind of draw people in and have discourse and have conversation and be able to kind of mitigate that or mediate it, whether or not you agree with the person's stances or not. You and I have had conversations like this many times over the course of the years that we've known one another. And so that's why I knew you'd be a good guest. So when you think of genius, who do you think of? Who comes to mind just off the rip?
So the very first person that came to mind was Albert Einstein. I just thought of an idea, and I've been indoctrinated to believe from TV that light bulb going off, that's Albert Einstein. But
Yeah.
when I got past that, I thought of Barack Obama. Not the cliche way you may think, but for what he was able to see long term, the vision he was able to manifest and then achieve, and what he was able to endure and still achieve, maybe not to the degree he wanted, but just the mere accomplishments of continuously moving up in the ranks of whatever profession it may be to achieve to be the first Black president. That's genius. The political loopholes that you have to navigate in order to get much less nominated,
Right.
is astronomical. And then to come from Chicago, I lived in Chicago. We lived in Chicago.
Yes, sir.
We know what it's like out there. So that's the modern day genius, I feel.
Okay, that's excellent. That's dope. How did you get beyond this conditioned? What word did you use?
Indoctrinated.
Thank you. That's a great word. How did you get beyond this indoctrination of Einstein being genius? One, to be able to see somebody of color as in that role, and then two, to see yourself in it.
So I'm actually gonna give credit to my older kids. They have been instrumental in challenging my normal way of thoughts. So I don't immediately go to the canned thought or the canned responses anymore. I actually think of other scenarios that were once taboo, or see things from another light, another direction. And as I told you, I initially went to the Einstein, but I'm able to a little bit better now see right past that. Like, let's go deeper than that. I ask myself those questions to go deeper and then see if I can answer that question.
See, that's why you had this ability to have these conversations with people, because the surface level, people can stay at this surface level and have these conversations, but it takes somebody to kind of pierce through the surface and be like, nah, let's go deeper. And that's what I hope to do today. So the next place that I naturally tend to go is to focus on Einstein for a little bit, because that's by and large who everyone envisions when they think of this word genius. But the problem with that is that in associating this word genius to this man Einstein, people disassociate it from themselves, because they're like,
that's right.
I'm not the one. I don't know what E equals MC squared is. I have no idea what the theory of relativity is about. So yeah, I must not be a genius because I don't think like him. Right. And this is not to take anything away from Einstein, but he was just one type of genius.
Correct.
And once we kind of understand that and say, okay, he's one type, that implies that there are other types of genius, which you've already implied, you've already alluded to it. And so he has this quote. Let me know if you've heard this quote before. I have a feeling you might have. You are well-versed individual.
I try to be.
Yeah, you try. You try at very least. So let me know if you've heard of this this saying before. It purportedly comes from Einstein, and it makes sense if it does. It goes like this: if you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
So I've never heard that.
Okay, how's that hitting you?
There's so many double entendres and metaphors and similes. No, it's perplexing because, say it again for me.
Yeah, so you're the first person that has to say it twice. Most time I have to say it twice. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
So obviously we know that fishes isn't supposed to climb a tree. But if you put in the fish's mind that it's supposed to, if you reward the fish every time the fish swims upward, and the fish believes swimming upward is the normal way to swim, then the fish knows no better.
Right.
I agree with it. I agree with that.
It's getting into this whole programming and indoctrination. I mean, you and I have talked about indoctrination. I told you one time, I confessed it. I was like, hey, look, man, when I introduce my children to the faith that I believe, I'm indoctrinating them. I am, like, real talk. That's all we do as parents. When we imprint these different standards and faiths and beliefs that we have, we're indoctrinating them. And to a certain extent, all learning kind of starts from a place of indoctrination, but then you have to give people a chance to give them access to knowledge so that they can then make a decision on their own, whether or not they agree with or want to dismantle, improve upon, or tear down what we indoctrinate them with as children.
Yeah, we completely agree on this. I think where the challenges have come as late is when you start, I find people who indoctrinate, we all indoctrinate, but I found that once the indoctrination occurs, you said something important where you say you give the child the ability to reach out and explore. A lot of times, once indoctrinated, there's a fear of adding or introducing something different because it can confuse them. Mm-hmm. So what I'll see is, I don't see that. I don't see indoctrination with the provision of, hey, this is also open for you to go ahead and read, and go ahead and look at, go ahead and experiment in, because it may bring back something that was never wanted. Otherwise, you wouldn't indoctrinate.
True.
So it is very challenging when you start talking. You said that I have conversations a lot of times where I'm either on the left and the right, and I try to be really understanding of the opposite side of the position that I'm debating. But you can get into some real sticky subjects where, yes, like we discussed, you say, listen, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not moving off of that. So it's interesting.
It is. Now, I mean, truth be told, how much have I exposed my children to? Like, as it relates to the faith, that the Christian faith that I'm raising them in, have I exposed them to the tenets of, Islam or Buddhism? No, I haven't. But I'm not going to, I encourage them to, like, hey, look, don't take my word for it. Get in this Bible and study it for yourself. We build things around them to help them do that. And if they want to go off, I was telling my son something today, and I was like, hey, look, you might not believe what it is that I'm telling you. And it's not, at this point, he's 14. I'm like, you don't have to. I said, I realized that me even saying this, because I'm your father and you're trying to get into your own manhood, me even pointing towards the scriptures as the reason why I'm saying this might turn you off to it, simply because it's me saying it at this point. Because, everything that he's trying to become is like, well, I want to become my own man. I don't want to become your man. I want to become my own man. So I was like, if I side to the right, it's almost a guarantee, not a guarantee, but it's a higher likelihood that a teenage boy will side to the left, because he's just like, nah, I need to find this out on my own.
Exactly.
That's a whole other.
So you talk about the difficulties and how you parent, or the ways you want to parent when it comes to introducing religion. I'm even getting into even stickier subjects, that if it's even possible, than religion.
Wow, something stickier than religion, though? Okay, I'm listening.
Which is like challenging marriage. Okay. Which is like challenging the ideas that, just like in my beliefs, I do label myself a Christian, so let me state that. Now here's where I go astray. My questioning never gets satisfied. To the point where I do believe that it becomes a hindrance, it becomes a barrier, because at some point, religion is the absence of logic. You have to believe, you have to choose to believe. And I have very hard times doing that. So it's moved over to marriage now, where you can have these difficult conversations to say, hey, are you meant to be with one person for the rest of your life? The older I get, the more I travel the world, the more I realize that at the end of the day, it is my belief that everyone who is married has settled. Because there are about 3 billion people on the planet. And if you've reached 50 states, 40, let's say 25 states in America, in the United States, you think you've seen everybody. You think you've experienced everything. You're going to meet that one person, and you have to make that decision that this is who I love, this is who I want to be with. And even if the other person is out there, I'm not willing to go look, wait, or find. And that's been like very interesting when it comes to the whole intimacy. I'll say it like that, challenging things for intimacy. My older girls have opened I don't want to say open my eyes, but I'm a little more understanding to like the LGBT. You get past that, you get into conversations about trans. There's so much that if you kind of step back just a tad bit and say, let me try to understand this. How I was taught was how I believe, but it doesn't hurt asking these questions.
Yeah.
Now, whether you agree with it or not is something totally different.
Right. I mean, that's interesting, right? Because we tend to mix in our faith with these sayings that sound like they're enforcing faith. Like, you have one soulmate, and I think about realistically, like, if I have one soulmate and they happen to pass away, does that mean that I'm out? I ain't gonna be with nobody again? Nah, I don't think that means that at all. So there is a certain amount of like, okay, I'm choosing to block things out. You said you make a decision, right? And to me, we could have this gonna be a whole, if I don't rein this in, it's gonna be a whole nother tangent.
Right.
But everything that you're saying to me relates back to faith, but not religion, but faith, because religion is about indoctrinating traditions, and traditions often don't have nothing to do with the word of God. And so everything to me, as far as what you mentioned about marriage and transgender and LGBTQ, boils down to understanding the word of God, which a lot of people don't. And they just start spouting stuff without knowledge. And then that's what's causing a bunch of confusion in the world. That's my take on that, but that's a whole other conversation.
We about to go.
I want to get back to this fish though. Let's get back to this fish. So with this fish and this indoctrinated fish who, like you said, I've never thought about this fish being rewarded for trying to climb this tree, right? But let's take that's an interesting perspective. Because most of the time I say, like, all that happens is this fish keeps hearing over and over again, you need to be climbing this tree. You need to climb this tree, right? But what if they're being rewarded for try to climb a tree though? Here's a tree, try and climb a tree. But the thing of it is that we all know by nature, fish don't belong out of water. They don't belong on the land. They belong in the water. And if this fish doesn't realize this on its own, and all it's hearing is this indoctrination that says you need to be climbing this tree, one, it's going to think it's stupid. Two, it's going to die.
Correct.
Straight up. If it doesn't get into its element, if it doesn't get into its lane, what it was designed and purpose to do, it's going to die.
Yes, that I see what you did there. Yeah, I got that. Yeah. And that's real stuff. That's real stuff. But I want to say that, unfortunately, because of however you believe in faith, that's what the world is. And the world is being rewarded. A lot of society is being rewarded for doing the bad things. Social media.
Oh yeah.
Some choice words for social media, but it has brought out the worst in society. Now, granted, it is all what you look for. There are much more positive things that you could follow. Well, I guess what I would say is society that controls what's published to what's put out to society seems to be rewarded monetarily more for the focus on the negative.
Oh, heck yeah. You're bringing up an interesting point, because the reward of the fish, if we take it into social media, the reward is temporary, but it's this validation. How many likes can I get, right? And now, like you said, YouTube will monetize, everybody monetizes absolute trash and foolishness. So now that's right. People are being something that's not who they really are for the sake of this reward, this recognition, this false validation. And it's temporal, but that's if they're not getting the proper validation, that's all they'll go after. If nobody ever comes up to this fish and say, hey, you belong in the water. Did you know that? Did you know that, like, when you get into this water, your who you are is just going to activate and you're going to take off? Did you know that that's your proper lane? If nobody ever tells this fish that, and the metaphor is about your genius dies when you are accepting the labels that people put on you that are not who you really are. Like we were talking about this with another guest with social media, and we're like, there are trolls out there who will tear you down and don't even know you. Though they don't know you, you'll listen to them.
Yep.
You'll be like, oh my gosh, your whole day will be thrown off by somebody who left a comment to tear you down, who you don't even know. And that's what the fish is. Why is the fish listening to somebody that doesn't even know what it was designed to do? To tell it, like, you done.
Yeah, right? that foundation is extremely important. What's important is whoever that base, that foundation is, they have to be providing. They have to be in some ways secure. What's the word? I'm not trying to say pure by any means, but they have to have some type of what they give you has to be healthy.
Integrity?
Because what's that?
Integrity?
Well, I was going to say what they feed you has to be positive. If your foundation, let's use the fish, and I'm going to use a young kid. And if the fish gets fed to believe, or it gets sprung up to believe that it can climb this tree, and you teach a young boy to believe that what he's going to be is a thug, or go to jail all the time, then both of those things are going to keep trying to achieve what the foundation taught them.
Yep. So
even if you have a foundation, that foundation has to be solid. It has to be feeding you positivity so that you can mature. Now, I'm a real big one on personal responsibility, but it has taken me talking to people and understanding over and over in life that everybody handles things differently. You can you can have a twin in the same house going through the same thing, which I do, you guys can experience things differently.
Yeah.
So even though I say, and I used to get on people a lot about personal responsibility, that's what I've realized that. And even if the foundation is positive, you'll still find those that go astray. But in keeping with the fish, that figure, parental or not, that's supposed to be telling this fish, hey, you can't swim. You're not supposed to be climbing trees.
Yeah.
I've even found it with my own fish, a great analogy. when I had one fish and I would feed it food, it would come to the top extremely quickly, like almost jump out of the tank. I put 4 other fish in that same pod, in that same tank, and that one fish gradually stopped almost jumping out the tank and started waiting at the bottom with the others until I closed the lid, which was a signal that it was safe for them. So I've seen it happen in real life.
Wow, see, you taking it to the next level. I ain't never had nobody say, actually, I've had fish, and here's what happens, right?
Yeah.
So I heard you speak on this though, like this foundation. If we don't have, it's even affirming foundations can be dangerous because you can affirm somebody incorrectly though.
Right.
Like before you affirm, you have to assess. You have to know, like, what is it that who are you and what is it that you're supposed to be doing? What are you designed to do? So we have to be very careful in valuing our children without like projecting ourselves on them or what we want them to be, because we can want them to be something great. Have you been keeping up with Bel Air?
No, I've been going back. I got to go back to it.
Man, there's something I want to bring up, but I don't want to mess up the last episode for you. But
no, we can talk about it.
Okay, Carlton goes through something where he has this panic moment. He's at a church and he's getting ready to sing. I mean, that came out of nowhere. He's never had an inkling of being able to sing in this new thing, right? Ever. But he's like singing at a church, but he freaks out because the pressure of everybody saying like, you're this, you're that, you're great at this, and all the other stuff, like the lacrosse that he does. He's like, I have to be perfect. Yeah. He's like, that's a positive affirmation to try and reach perfection, but not if it comes to the detriment of the person because they feel like they have to be more than who they're supposed to be. So you have to be careful in not speaking negative or positive in such a way that does not speak to who this person is. So I say all that to say the fish is an analogy for, hey, look, you're trying to assess, like Einstein, if we stick to this animal metaphor, Einstein is a bear. This dude belongs in a tree, right? So that's a proper assessment. But the fish needs to get into the water, and that's how your genius is. You have something unique that's not necessarily meant to be defined by high IQ, high GPA, whatever, right? I'm not saying you specifically. I'm not trying to say like you have high GPA.
You're not book smart.
Right. But that book smarts, you can be genius and not have book smarts, right? You can be genius and be creative and not have done well at school at all. And we have to get this type of messaging into our kids, because the place that I go into schools with this message, and I'm always interested to see how people respond to it, because I've seen the negative affirmations, right? I went to a school one time. It was 9 to 10 little boys. I was asked by the principal, can you come in weekly and just talk to these kids? Because I mean, they're struggling. And so I went and would talk to them. And I decided to do this workshop with them. And I was like, hey, look, each of y'all are geniuses. They was like, who are you talking to? They was like mad at me. Like, how dare you? But then, they turn around and start roasting one another. They were comfortable hearing words that tore them down. But when I spoke to them, that was supposed to build them up, because they had this annotation, like, no, that these people who are outside of our classroom, because they stay in the same classroom all day. And
it's funny what you're saying. So my daughter goes to a school that we know that does that same thing. You get accepted into a program, they bust you in from all around the county, they put you in this little area, and you're supposed to stay away from the general population. And because of COVID, that general population has started to merge with the specialty students. And this is what I'll say. It's extremely important that children are fed positivity. People in general are fed positivity. It also goes back to what that person that's feeding you that positivity thinks is positive. Something as simple as, back in the day, I'll say I was raised to believe that boys don't cry. You don't really show your emotions. You don't really show your feelings like that. And now other people, you just don't behave a certain way. That's not ladylike. That's not how boys, so on and so forth. Or saying something like, hey, you should be stronger than that. This whole anxiety issue. I can admit that I've struggled with with the anxiety and the belief of how many people actually have it, because it's something that you can't always see.
Yeah.
But saying to somebody, hey, that shouldn't be affecting you. What are you talking about? Anxiety can push somebody clear off the deep end. The ability to be compassionate and show sympathy and empathy for people, no matter what their situation is, no matter if you understand it or not. It's difficult for some people. It's like I have to be able to accept everything. I have to find empathy and sympathy in everything. Like, where do I get to draw a line and say that's ridiculous? I don't feel any sympathy or empathy for you. That was stupid. Or I agree with that. I'm not doing that. I'm not teaching that. I don't accept that. I don't want that around me. We're losing that ability to do that because you get called something phobia on no matter which topic is turned into.
Right.
But the foundation and everything that we were talking about, there was something else that you brought up. Go ahead.
You'll come back to you. It might not. We covering a lot of ground. We haven't even gotten into the components of genius yet, but it's okay. So these boys, they're on IEPs. We would have called it special ed back in the day. All of them, have, a label ADHD, ADD, emotional outbursts. They're throwing chairs when they get upset or whatever. I tell them they're geniuses. They look at me like I cursed at them. And then I say, okay, let me ask you a question, because this gets into the first component of genius. The first component of genius is passion. But instead of focusing on what you love, when you try to unlock your genius, I tell people to focus on what you hate. And I'll explain why in a second. This is always a conversation starter, though. I do this with kids because they'll tell you what they hate in a second. So I asked these boys this, and they was like, "You sure though?" I'm like, "Yeah, tell me what you hate though." There was these boys, Fernando, who could never agree on anything. Universally, they said the same thing. What do you think it was?
What do they hate?
Let me frame it better. I'm gonna go back to the fish. This fish been getting a lot of play. What do you think the fish would tell you it hates if every day somebody was coming through and saying like, "You dumb because you can't climb this tree"? If people keep saying that, what might the fish hate?
The fish might end up hating the tree.
The tree, yeah. Let's run with that. The tree.
The fish would also hate. It could be a number of things. It could be the fact that the first thing I say that I remember what you said was, let's say this fish, every day somebody comes in. I think the fish would hate people. I think the fish would hate whatever it is that's coming to it. It would start to hate that. I think the fish would hate the feeling of the words being used.
Yeah.
I think the fish would hate the mere ability that he can't do this action, whatever this action is. He may hate or dislike or may avoid that action. If that action is climbing, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So these are all good things. One of the things you said is that, they would hate the tree. They would hate the feeling of like being less than. They would hate the people. I tell the kids though, I'm like, hey, look, we don't focus on people that we hate. Don't tell me who you hate. Tell me what you hate.
Right.
So thinking of that fish, now, what do you think it is that these kids who are put into the same class, ostracized from everybody else, what do you think it is that they've all told me universally that they hate?
So I know you said you don't focus on people, but I think that the kids would hate the school.
That's it.
Yeah.
School is not people. School is a system.
The school is a representation of yes.
The school is a system. And that system is telling them every day they get jammed into this classroom, you don't belong here. You don't fit.
Right.
We're not going to try to service you. Right. So they all told me school, and they thought they had wrecked my whole workshop. I was like, yeah, check this out though. I'm glad you said school. And I started talking about why I'm focusing on hate, which is what I'm about to do with you right now. The reason why I say when you begin to focus on what you hate, you begin to tap into what your genius is because the thing that you hate is the thing that you were actually meant to fix in this world.
Oh, I agree.
It annoys you because it impacts you in a negative way. Whenever, and it's something that comes from childhood, I believe, most times. It can come in your adulthood too, but it's something that you have a long relationship with. You're like, man, I don't like it when I feel like this. This thing makes me feel this way. When this person does this, it makes me feel this way. And I hate feeling like that. So that when you get older and you see it active someplace else, you're like, oh, I hate that. when you see it impacting people you love, it don't even have to be people you love. When you see it impacting people in general, that empathy rises up and you're like, oh, I hate that. And you start saying
Yes.
stuff like, somebody need to do something about that. And if
Yep.
you find yourself pointing to the same thing over and over again, like somebody need to do something about that, guess who that somebody is?
You.
Now,
Yeah.
there'll be plenty of people who hate that thing around the world, but nobody's going to hit it quite like you. Nobody's going to feel it quite like you. And so if you take that logic, I took that logic and said, hey, look, if you hearing what I'm saying, then each of you are future educators. And they got real quiet on me. They was like, oh, snap. What did you just say, though? These are third, fourth, and fifth graders, man. If they could have phased out of the wall, they would have just left the classroom. They was like, oh, snap. You just spoke something into me. And I said, hear me out. I said, the school is broken. And whenever I say this, teachers never disagree with me. The school system is broken. There are many broken systems in the world. School system is one of them. The reason why it's broken is because we have 7 to 8 different learning styles, right? Mm-hmm. But at most, teachers probably come from 3. They come from visual, auditory, and the logic side of the brain, right? Correct. And so these kids aren't speaking that language. That's not their learning style. It's one of the other 5 that we didn't even talk about. Probably expeditionary learning where they got to learn with their hands. But they're told like, no, learn this way. They hear this information coming at them and it's getting lost in translation. They're like, I don't understand what you're saying because you're not speaking my language. But they're told that something's wrong with them. Now you want an IEP, an individual education plan, and you're like, I hate this though. Like I hate school. I hate math. I hate a particular subject because it makes me feel like I'm supposed to be climbing a tree when I think I'm supposed to be doing it another way.
Right. Yeah, that's where. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that like there's so many. You know what? I'm gonna have to start writing stuff down so I don't forget it. But the whole, oh man. So I want to tell you what mine is. Is that cool?
Tell me, yeah, I was going to get to that next. Tell me what you hate.
So the reason it relates to the school thing so well, because that was genius what you just said about how you're the one that has to fix it. That's known. But the thing that you're running away from is actually the thing that. So mine is obligation.
Okay.
I like my time. I do not like it obligated. I don't like it monopolized. I do not like it taken advantage of. I like to come in and do things. And when I'm done, I like to leave. And that has been through every area of my life, from relationships to jobs to everything. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say it's a fear, but it is definitely something that I run away from. So listening to the idea of the kids, their future is in education. That's amazing.
It's a game changer.
That could be that could actually be truthful.
Yeah.
So I like that.
I'm just like 1/3 of the way through on that. Let me continue. Like, look, so the reason why if they instead of running away from education, like I hate it, if they run towards it with this same passion, because you hear stuff like I hate that with a passion, but passion is associated to drive. Like you will, if you have passion about something, you will pursue it until you catch it, until you do everything that you want to do to it to fix it, because you see that it's broken. It won't matter how much you're paid to do it. It won't matter whether your impact is great or small. It won't matter how big the system is. You'll literally become a David chasing a Goliath. You'll be like, I'm about to take this thing's head off. I don't care who gets in my way, what gets in my way. I'm gonna address this thing. And so if these young boys discover what their learning style is, and then that learning style is turned into their teaching style.
Okay.
Now they're reaching the other people in the school system who have this same they're like, man, you speaking my language though. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. And that begins.
So real quick before I forget it. So that reminds me of something. It's not exactly related to the being able to teach a broader set of people. Mm-hmm. But somebody once told me, be the father that you wished you had, not the father you had, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I believe that goes along with the educator. If there's something that you didn't like about education, something about the school style, something, whatever it was, remember that, use that, benefit those who are like you, that you're bringing up, so you don't lose them like you may have at a point been lost yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I've had to do that with my son, right? There's some things that I didn't like about how my dad fathered me. My dad was great, but when I became a
Hmm.
teenager, he would encroach on my personal space, trying to maintain this relationship, but in trying to get closer to me, it actually made me back up. So now with my son, and I'm observing the same patterns, I'm like, I'm gonna do the exact opposite. I know how you feel. Not that I'm gonna leave the brother alone. I'm still gonna govern him as his father, but I'm giving him his space now. I back up off this brother a little and let him come to me. And I've been getting dividends on that, right? Because the thing that I hated about how my dad raised me as a teenager, I'm like, I'm not gonna repeat that pattern. I'm gonna learn from
Right.
that and do something different.
Well, that's
So
the difficulties that I've been having with like, once again, speaking on our generation, I'll speak for myself. My personal belief was I became the genius that I became.
mhm,
Sometimes, if my parents ever watch this, sometimes in spite of them,
yeah,
sometimes because what I felt was negative, that in my mind I turned and made into a positive. If my
yeah,
dad didn't make it to all of my football games, it's my responsibility to make it to my son's football games. But I became stronger. I didn't need my parents to be at all my football games. I wasn't crying and everything. You're supposed to
yeah,
suck it up. Life happens. They got to work. They can't be at everything. What's wrong with you?
yeah,
And then having that dilemma of, well, I'm the type of person who is as confident, arrogant, cocky, mature, um, because of that
yeah,
heartache
yeah,
that I went through.
sure.
But I don't want them to go through the same thing. So yeah.
I mean, and you could do better and still there's this because your children are their own unique person, they can still respond adversely to that. I mean, all you can do is look at where you come from and try to do something different. And that's the thing, this whole genius thing, when I walk you through the components, because it's three, it's passion, talent, and purpose. It's not meant to click right away. You got to kind of put it together like a puzzle and figure out like how does this come together to unlock what's on the inside of me, right? So unlocking what I'm talking about with these kids, like they're now addressing the brokenness of the system is that all these languages aren't being represented. But now, if they come back to it, they'll represent it. But as long as they're marginalized and as long as there are no resources put into them, the system stays broken. Right.
Yes.
So this, like I said, this is a game changer because there are so many of us. You mentioned something earlier. See, I should be writing stuff down too. It escapes me right now, so I'm gonna keep going. But when we get into this idea that we know that we've been put on this planet to do something, to lead
Yes.
it better than how we found it, that gives us drive, that gives us purpose, that gives us understanding, so that we know, like, hey, somebody come and say you're supposed to be doing this. No, I'm not. Nah,
Mhm.
I know exactly what I've been put on this planet for. I know my lane. I know what I'm designed to do.
I remember there was a I really struggle with this because so I used to give a class, an A+ computer hardware class
Mhm.
to a bunch of 15, I think they were between the ages of 9 and 15 at the church.
Okay.
And it was some of the greatest experiences I had, raising them up in IT, and all I saw was these future computer programmers and things of that nature. And the parents were the best.
Okay.
Um, but oh man, I just lost what I was saying.
We firing on all cylinders, man. It's
We
so
are.
much stuff firing off
So
right now.
go ahead. If I interrupt you, it means it just jumped back into my head.
Okay, and then I'll lose my train of thought, and then we'll get through this somehow though. We all right.
Oh
so,
man.
so check it. If you find a system that's broken or anything, let's just make it basic. If you were in your house and you came across a broken chair, what would you look for? Just generically speaking, what would you look for to address this thing that's broken in your house?
I gotta find the tools.
You got to find the right tools, right?
Mhm.
And so the next component of the genius equation is your talent. Your talent is your tool that you should be utilizing to fix what's broken in the world. What's your passion?
That's what it was.
Okay, go ahead.
I had a problem with this fixing what's in the world. So, and this goes to the obligation. It's funny how I tie this together.
Yeah.
I had a friend. We have a friend who went to a school that we know of, in a city that starts with an S. Mascot is a ram. Um, he returned from a vacation, and it was his belief that it was the responsibility of all people to repair this area that this school was in.
Okay.
And there were lots of programs, lots of things done, lots of community outreach, lots of volunteering, lots of posts about things to do, so on and so forth, mentoring, so on and so forth. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to tell you that I had no care to fix this city that we were talking about, because it was my belief that I did not negatively hurt that area.
Yeah.
And my responsibility as an adult with kids at this point was to make sure the children that I put out in the world are positive citizens and not doing anything.
Okay.
Now I felt that was also bad in a way, because I did feel bad. Like, the community's not doing very well, I could help out. But it was like, listen, I was starting to feel obligated to other areas. I felt that I was taking away from my main obligation, which was my home.
Yeah.
And I had to refocus that.
So the thing about genius is you have to know, one of my other interviewers said this. He said, you got to know your nines and zeros. You're never a 10 at the things that you're good at. You should always rate yourself as a 9 so that you know that you have more to do. There's always more to improve upon, but you got to know your zeros too. You got to know the places that you are not gifted, that you are not driven to do anything, because that's not where your focus should be. Genius is not about being good at everything. Right. Genius is about very focused, like, no, this is my lane right here. That lane can be applied to several different things, but you got to stay in your lane. And so, this reminds me of, there's this guy that I've never met him personally, but there's this guy, he's in this church in Ohio, and I'm told that, he's this great evangelist. He brings people into the church, but he gets mad at other people for not doing the same thing that he's doing. I'm like, well, they're not built like you built though. They don't have the same gifts, the same talent, the same skill set. They don't have the same passion. So you can't make somebody feel obligated to do what you're doing, because that's like telling the fish to climb this tree when it should be in the water.
That's right. No, that's me and the wife go through things like that. We're both not built the same. She's extrovert. She's introverted. I'm extroverted. She doesn't like music that much. I love hip hop, go-go, and everything. We're opposites to a degree, and sometimes we get into these combative situations because I'm finding it hard to understand why she doesn't understand that joke from that movie. Like, everybody saw that movie. Like, how do you not relate to that? You haven't heard that? You haven't heard that song? I'll say something simple.
My wife does not like The Office, and I'd be like, man, that was hilarious. She's like, and then making me feel stupid for laughing at it. I'm like, man.
If I tell you this, let's see if you get it. If I'm talking about hip hop, and I say, oh baby, the 90s was the greatest time period ever. If what you say is true, what would you say back?
Who says it's true?
If I was talking about a song in hip hop in the 90s, and I said, oh, it had this one verse that started with, if what you say is true.
Oh, snap.
What she's supposed to say back to me is, the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. And I'm like, you don't remember that? She never heard Wu-Tang ever. So no, it's being able to relate and all those things. It's just funny.
You lost me. I feel like I'm not a hip hop head now, because we do that. You and I catch each other off guard every once in a while. They were like, I'll say
you got me with the cannabis one. You got me you got me with that one.
Yeah. But I get you though. But I mean, and that's the complementary aspect. I mean, I could have a whole different series about genius and marriage, right? Because that's, like, to get people to come together with these different qualities and traits is crazy. But the beautiful thing about
let me clear that up as well, really quick. So with me and the wife, and with us sometimes coming to heads in the how different we are, that's when we've learned to have discussions, gone through counseling to better understand each other's opposites, to better to not try to change her into what I think she should be, and accept her for who she is. And a lot of people in society, I think we're trying to fumble through those things. Another story.
Yeah. But truth be told, like your genius is meant to inspire others in their genius, but not to become a mirror to you. Some people will have similar passions and similar talents, but when you come into contact with somebody like your spouse, you have to recognize that they shine in areas that you don't, and vice versa. But when you come together, it complements. And that's why this genius thing can impact the entire world, because when your purpose in life, this is the last component. Your purpose in life is simple. It's to identify your talent and understand that it's a tool to address the thing that's broken, which gets into your passion so that you begin to unlock your genius. And so if everybody is doing that, if everybody understands their role, we're going to address systemic issues around the world. Even if we don't know one another, we're like, hey, I'm addressing this thing that I hate. And you're like, well, I hate the same thing on the other side of the planet, but we're coming together and we're going to fix it because everybody is now, it reminds me of the Invincibles, where Syndrome was like, you know what? I'm gonna make everybody a superhero so that nobody's a super.
That's right. That's right. No, that you said something where you said everybody coming together. It was funny. I had a conversation. Do you think that this is something that is more focused on in any particular race more than another? The coming together and the coming together, the need to come together thoughts.
That's a complicated question, because there are some things that are exclusive to our Black culture that we need to come together on to fix, that if we don't do it, nobody else will. But then there's another aspect that says, hey, look, when it comes to decrying racism, people automatically count us out because we're like, well, you Black, you just being extra. But when a white person sees the systemic, I'm talking about systems, when they see the broken systemic issues of race, when we see these laws that are implying things that limit us because of the color of our skin or our gender or whatever, somebody that we need these allies to activate their genius and say, hey, look, I'm gonna come alongside you because your voice is getting discounted because of who you are. But if I go into the same forum and speak this, it's gonna get heard quicker than yours is. So there's this need to come together internally, but there's also a need to come together externally as well. Does that?
Yeah. No, I wasn't trying to turn it into a race thing, but I just remember a conversation that I had with somebody today where they were having a conversation, a debate with other people regarding the big news after what happened yesterday. And one of her statements, she started talking about small business, and wanted to know why people weren't supporting her. And then she started saying, well, all these people need to support so on and so forth, blase, blase. And what you'll hear people say a lot of times is, we're not a monolith. We don't all think the same.
Sure.
I think the unfortunate, what could be deemed as negative or not positive thoughts and the way people handle things, that's what makes everybody unique. Mm-hmm. Having everybody on the same level as you're talking about, which would be awesome. Everybody moving for the goal. It's positive. Even if your positive way of thinking is still within a certain realm of equal morality, so everybody agrees to a degree.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I don't know if
it's remember, like these things that we're tackling with our genius are large, and so we may not see. I don't see how this is going to get resolved, but we won't. I mean, when you tap it into it, you really won't care. You're like, I don't care if this gets resolved. I just know that I have a part to play, and I'm going to play it, right? Like when you say we're not a monolith, but I don't know that. It's true, we're not a monolith, because what I was getting ready to say is, if you ask a Black person about racism, I think that the majority of us would be like, yeah, I hate that. I don't like racism. You have a few of us that'll say like, oh, it doesn't exist, and we're beyond that. But the majority of us is going to say like, no, that's an issue. And their solutions are going to vary according to their talents. But at the end of the day, if they say, hey, look, you address it from your angle, I'm going to address it from my angle. We both agree that this is an evil in the world that needs to be abolished, and we're going to pursue it in our own way. Let your geniuses work independently to address the issue and then dismantle it.
Yes. No, I agree. I think that, so we were talking about social media earlier, and I think that's one of the mediums that is given more rise to the, so it's dangerous to say this, but the opposite opinion. All opinions, everybody can have one, but they're not all positive.
Right.
I believe the definition of positivity and healthy is still the same to a degree. So even someone who thinks that this bad thing is actually positive to them just sounds crazy saying it.
Right.
But yeah, everybody moving in the same direction, the same way. There's gonna be differences here and there, but I think it's definitely positive. Unfortunately, what I told the lady at the time was, you got to focus on yourself. You got to focus on the positivity that you can put out regarding the situation we were talking about, and people that see your light will come to you. And that's kind of how I feel with like when we talk about the school systems, the teachers. I have a family full of teachers, and there's teachers that hate teaching and teachers that hate schools. And over time they get corrupted, and then they become, not all teachers by any means, but I've seen, heard, they become some of the worst things in the school. So I think it's important to constantly feed yourself positivity to push that.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you like what your talent is. And I'm glad you said that you come from a family of teachers, because talent is generational. Like we see it in athletes, we see it in entertainers all the time, where that family just produces X, Y, and Z. But a lot of times, if we don't know what our talent is, we won't look to our own family and see like, well, what is it that's in our lineage that's in my hand? A lot of times, like I said, we'll see it in actors and entertainers, but we won't see it in ourselves and be like, well, I don't have a talent. Like, yes, you do. Right. So my question to you is to help you figure out and see if you're walking in your genius is like, what would you say your talent is?
So my talent is actually changing to a degree. Okay. I would say up to 43, from my teenage years up to now, my talent has actually been leadership. What do you mean by leadership? To take a group of people and either accomplish or motivate to accomplish a task. And it was also to be able to adapt and communicate in a positive way, so that even in times of negativity, when I had to address something that was bad, it was negative repercussions for something, it was to be able to speak with people in a way that wasn't demeaning and always was showing respect. So I believe my communication is one of my strengths as well.
Okay, so you said, I heard communication and I heard leadership, which speaks to what I said within the first 10 minutes of our conversation. I see you do that on Facebook all the time. Communication and leadership allows people to have this forum where they can feel safe to have some dialogue and say some things that might not be popular, but to at the same time, feel validated by what they're saying or be able to defend it. Like, okay, this is your stance. I want you to feel like you can defend that, right? And so you have the right to be able to defend that. And so that talent, when you think about the thing that you hate and that thing of this feeling of obligation, perhaps the way that obligation was presented to you was not a conducive way for you to understand it. So if you could, just like I've broken down genius, I've broken down passion, I've deconstructed it and reconstructed it with you on the inside of it, how would you use your communication and leadership skills to break down, to deconstruct what we know obligation to be and build it back up in such a way that this is the right way to address it? Like if you could, if you see something that's built incorrectly and you say, all right, I need to just tear this thing down and start from scratch, like how would you build it? How would you build how people view obligation using your skills as a communicator and as a leader?
So first, when I deconstruct where my this thing I don't like comes from, it comes from like a job that I really didn't like when I was younger.
Okay.
And having to be places when I didn't want to be there, and just having to feel that in order to make this money, or in order to satisfy this parents' rule at the time, depending on how old I was, or things like that, I had to be in this place doing this job that I didn't like, doing this action that I didn't like. So when I got to periods where I had become successful enough, either in job or even in my value system. I actually became more successful in valuing my time and not caring about others' opinions. And things that, whether it be parents or whether it be friends, like if I don't want to do this, I'm going to be okay not doing it. So I would find ways not to, from an early onset, to maybe bring some positivity to an obligation. What is it? Everybody's motivation is different. Everything that motivates, that gets somebody up out of bed to actually want to do something, bring a smile to their face, is different for everybody. Maybe trying to learn what mine would be. It probably wouldn't be great things when I was younger, but I don't know. For every hour you're here, you get whatever the motivation would be.
Yeah,
that's what I would like to more align that word, that sense of obligation with me in the beginning. The time. So it's one thing to be in a place you don't want to be, but then it's thinking about what you've missed, what you had time away from.
FOMO.
What's that?
I said FOMO, fear of missing out.
Exactly. So it's like probably a better maturity, with understanding that what you leave is going to be there when you get back. It's not important. A better education on what the long-term benefits, because you pay for it. I'm about to get into personal stuff, because you pay for it in the back end when you're not going to work like you're supposed to be, and you ain't contributing to your 401 and doing all this stuff because you want to go out here and chase butt and do stupid stuff. Then you wind up being 40, looking at your TSP or your 401 like, wow, I started saving late, and all the people who was funning with me or that I thought I was missing out on, I might be doing better than them, but I could be doing a whole lot better.
Yeah.
So it's really breaking down the time. What I feared was I was missing out on something, breaking away from the task, the job, whatever that thing was that I was doing. It didn't hold any interest to me. And then the building. It was usually some fast food place that I got tired of going home smelling like chicken. Or it was leaving O'Hare Airport at 4:30 in the morning, after smelling like bags from doing baggage handling. It was just after sitting on the UPS line after sorting packages all day, dusty and broke. And all of those things that I now say were strong motivators that helped me be so confident and secure and garbage. But if I could change those things, those qualities, and replace them with positive, I think I would have no problems with obligation now.
And see, so you can do that for yourself now. You can't do that for yourself back then because you can't go back. But much like with my son, I'm like, look, one guy asked me, like, if you could change the way you interacted with your dad when you were a teenager, would you? I said, yeah, but my dad is gone. I can't change that. But I can take those lessons and change how I interact with my son right now, right? And so these lessons that you learn, that you're learning, and Genius is all about failing, actually. It's about, because the fail is the first attempt in learning. Like, okay, I messed that up, but let me do it again. You can fix where you are now to a degree, but if you can get in contact with someone who is coming up into this idea of obligation and fear of missing out, that's younger than you, and say, hey, look, I gotta wait for you to look at this. That's going to motivate you the right way, though. Because how I was motivated didn't do anything for me. And that's when now you're going to begin to tap into this genius, because genius first works on you internally. And then once it begins to repair you internally, then you look around and say, who else can I apply this to, man? Who else's life can I change? Right? Because we always look to the generation that came after us, because if we can touch their lives, they can course correct in ways beyond what we can do when we learn the truth, right?
Right.
That's why, my kids, their talent is like mine. They're a wordsmith. And I'm like, yo, let me help you publish this book now, because I published my first book in my late 20s. You published your book at 7 and 9. Like, do you know the amount of stuff you're going to be able to do that I just couldn't do simply because I didn't have the time? Because I found out this stuff later in life. And so that's what genius begins to look like. Like, who can I reach that then can begin to operate in their lane, operate in this element longer than I was able to. And once you begin to do that, man, like you will begin to, it'll have this overwhelming impact where you begin to influence people that are, your sphere of influence is going to increase.
No, I had some kids like that in the A+ course, and they would come in and I would recognize the traits of, I don't want to be here.
Yep.
And it wasn't just church. It could be an event at the the Kennedy Center that my mom took me to. It's like, I don't want to be here. I know what that looks like. So then it's the art form of, all right, so you've noticed it. That's a skill. Now, how do you break through the barrier? If there's an attitude when they get there, how do you break through that? What do you have to say to them? How do you have to reward? How do you have to communicate in order to break through where I got this person to actually listen to me, at least listen to them?
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the challenges that I enjoyed, because even though I couldn't get the child to maybe not engage fully, I got them to be able to answer a couple of questions before they left the class. And it was like, all right, I got you. So next week we're going to build on top of that and build on top of that. And I think that's very important to be able to use things like that to break through, help other people.
But you're tapping into your talent though to do that, the communication skills you say you have and the leadership skills that you have, right? And so I'll share this with you and then we'll close out. When I shared this message one time at this, like, you know, well-to-do suburban school. And I remember there was an administrator in the room, right? And when she finished hearing my presentation, she was like, can I talk to you for a second? I'm like, yeah, sure. Because, you know, I started telling these kids asking these kids what they hate, and teachers get nervous, like, what are you about to say though? She came up to me, she said, hey, look, I need you to know as an administrator that how truthful what you're saying is. She was like, when I was in school, I was a truant. She said, I was always skipping school. And she said, now that I'm an administrator, I can see the truancy in other people. And I know more the reasons why that I can address better than somebody who was like, well, I never skipped school. Like, no, you can't read this person. So she was like, I full on believe what you're saying, because she's an administrator, not just a teacher, but an administrator who can now serve those truants better than anybody else can. Because she was like, I was a truant myself.
But the only problem I have with that is, for instance, I had a friend of mine who was had a strong position in mentoring people in the jail system.
Okay.
And there were so many young people in the system that would only respect people who had been in the system, that it was like there wasn't enough people in the area where I was in at the time. There wasn't enough people that hadn't been in the system that they would respect initially to really make an impact the way I wanted to make an impact. And that just hurt me so bad. I was like, I have this person sitting beside me that's been in jail for 10 years and they'll listen to everything. And I'm trying to give the same game and I can't get through to you because I don't have that badge.
Yeah.
That was one of the things in that particular thing that I just didn't like that.
So that's a good point that you make though. But if I can get this message around the globe, and I'm a part of this thing started by, I can't say and claim this all on my own. I've pulled these components from different places, from different books that I read, from different movements. There's a movement right now called GeniusIsCommon, started by Bruce George, who was behind, you know, Def Poetry Jam and Def Comedy Jam and all types of stuff, mainly Def Poetry Jam. And so our goal is to like inspire people to know that you have this genius, but if I can get this passion, talent, purpose in on this movement, then you won't have the problem of there's not enough of us. There weren't enough people who have been in the system to now reach back. If people understand that I have not an obligation, but I have a skill set. I'm designed, I'm built to go into this system, having been a part of it, and speak to this man in a way that nobody else can, then the pressure is off of you to feel like, well, it gotta be me. Like, I feel like I have a message and you may have a message, but you'll recognize it's enough geniuses in this element out here that I can walk away from this and feel like somebody's gonna get them. Right now, you feel like there's not enough because there's not more of us that are saying, I have this genius access that I can use to change the world around me. But if that's
completely 100% agree with you. This message here needs to be heard around the world. It is the way you're able to take that, what someone may see as a detriment of someone may be running away from. If you can change that idea, that mindset, that way of thinking to apply it in a more positive way, along with the other tenets, is amazing. You got me thinking stuff so much that I can't even get all my sentences out. But that's
why I wanted you on this show, man, because I knew it was going to hit you like, oh snap. Are you serious though?
Yes, yes. So it's kind of embarrassing because I like to talk a lot, but no, the just challenging those. So now my question is, so you better understand what they are.
Mhm.
You understand the impacts of what these things are doing to you. Now, what's the trigger for you to actually now putting into process of undoing and applying that gift, that genius?
So you lost me. What's the question? What's the ask?
No, what I'm saying, but the ask for me now is
Okay.
now that I've been made aware of these things by you, it's now trying to find out what's the trigger to get me to start actually manifesting and applying this so that an obligation no longer is a roadblock. I can stop saying, nope, I'm not leaving outside
Yeah.
of my home. Nope, I'm not doing this. And I can start saying, you know what? Let's get out here and use this genius because we're not promised to live forever. And
Right.
the longer I hold on to this genius, the less everybody else gets it. Now, that's very arrogant to say, but it's true, depending on what you're trying to give out to the world that's positive, in my
Yeah.
belief.
So that's, that goes back to this whole concept of you got to fail to get your genius activated. You got to just try. You got the first attempt in learning. You got to just step out. And like I said, it's like a puzzle that you're putting together. Like, how does this work together? And when it clicks, because when I put my pieces together, it didn't always work. But when it clicks, though, you'll feel it. You'll know it and be like, man, okay, how can I release this now? One way for you, though, to answer your question too, if you want to get into, well, how do I move beyond this trigger of obligation that makes me want to run the other way? You really got to get to the root cause of who and how this
Yeah.
obligation was presented to you in the first place, and begin to heal that trauma. There's some trauma associated with this obligation that when you address that trauma correctly, and I hear you going to therapy, I know you're going to therapy for, your marriage, but there's a lot of therapy that all of us, that's even a stigma, right? That we
Oh,
need
yes.
to go through and need to have access to so that we can heal correctly, so that when we encounter that, we're triggered by it, but we're not bound by it though.
Agreed.
You
Oh,
know what I'm saying?
yes.
The trigger is, oh snap, I see that, I need to fix that. And it doesn't evoke these emotions that were attached to it.
That's right. That's right. Oh, yeah. I've gone through it. I have word triggers. I have action or circumstance triggers where even that I know it's coming, even though I know it's happened and I know the feelings, and trying to suppress or trying to kind of like deviate or deflect the normal feelings of maybe it's a shakiness or an anxiety or uncomfortable or stomach or whatever,
Yeah.
trying to manifest it in different ways, think of different things. Oh yeah, there's real time, real world effects, mental things that you have to get counseling for to get through. And yes, we've been doing the marriage counseling. I also do the personal counseling. I used to not like what my older girls. They've been a blessing in that they continually challenge me, and they used to challenge me with every fault that you've ever had has been your parents, and I thought that was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything, like you have no idea what it was like back then, what parents had to do, so on and so forth. But then I started going through things on my own, and the counselor pointed out, well, how did that start? When did that begin?
Yeah.
Who taught you that? How did you learn that? No, don't just try to cover this up. Who taught you that?
Yeah.
And you realize it is a lot of pressure on parents to parent, and you can't get it right. But it was when you realize that, even though I wish this generation would stop saying it so much, like, here I go be getting defensive, and just get over it. Like, have your own things that you got through, and when you get through it, you have your own kids, then you can talk.
Right.
But I also look back on it and like, well, wait a minute. So I have a problem with that. Oh my mom did that.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm like this. Oh, I saw
I
my
didn't want to
dad do
say it,
that.
man. I didn't want to say it, man, but this obligation piece, I knew, I was like, man, I feel like it just links back to dad. And the
Yes.
thing of it is, because his father, so just like talent is, I got to end this, but just like talent is generational, these triggers and this brokenness is generational too. Because if we're just now coming into the knowledge of what it is that is causing us to respond and do things the way we do them, that's because like they were being done by our forefathers, but in ignorance though. without access to resources to help us identify them and solve them. So we're trying to come out of these generational curses that are causing the same things to happen and repeat themselves in these cycles, right?
That's right.
And so just like the talent is trying to come forth and break forth in the family generationally, this stuff is trying to take us out generationally too. And we have to begin to address it so that we can tap into that power and not see it as a crutch or not see it as something like, I got to cover that up.
No, I agree 100%. If you can get over seeing that as that crutch, that embarrassment, that whatever attachments you put with it, and you see the positivity in it, that would 100%
game change.
Be beneficial.
This is called a paradigm shift. That's what we're talking about doing. And
it's very much needed.
You and I can have our own series on this, man. We could just keep talking, going to part 2, part 3. Like it could just go off into divergence and all manner of stuff. I do.
So we're gonna need to do that. We're gonna need to do that because now I know I need to write stuff down because I keep losing it. It was like 30 things that I lost in mid sentence while you were saying stuff.
If we did this again, it would be a completely different conversation. Absolutely. I feel like because there just be these different things that come to the surface. They're not, and they're all fighting to get out, but different things would cause different conversations. And this is one of the reasons why I did talk to you, because I'm like, maybe there is something for us to start to do and put together where we can have these type of conversations on a regular basis and just put them out there and see how the world responds to them, man. So that's something to talk about for real.
Yes. There was something that I think fit very well with this conversation we had today about triggers, traumas, suppression of feelings that happened yesterday. That is all ties into the dynamic of husband and wives roles and
you're talking about marriage. Smacking Chris Rock though.
Well, I wasn't gonna say it, but it was just oh man, the power of what you think you're supposed to do as a man.
Yep.
Ego.
Yep.
Not really being supremely confident in who you are, because I believe there's some insecurities, some deep insecurities, that add to why that happened.
Yes, sir. You and I are going to talk offline about that. Maybe you and I should talk about that. All right.
Oh yeah.
Like, for real.
All right.
But is there anything? So I don't know that you're doing anything right now that's tapping into this genius, because it sounds like you got some work to do to try and figure out how this comes together. But is there anything that you're doing now that you just want to promote really quick? Just, I know you have a business with your wife. What's going on?
Well, yes, thank you for asking. My name is Fernando. My wife's name is Kim. We have a travel business that we call Joy Maker Journeys. That's all one word, Joy Maker Journeys. You can follow us on YouTube and you can follow us on Instagram at Joy Maker Journeys. We do travel everywhere. We specialize in cruises. Right now we're doing the Norwegian, the Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Disney. We like to go out. We like to have fun. We like to enjoy, have conversations like this, and we're just really chill. So when you get a chance, come by, check us out at Joy Maker Journeys.
Hey man, I told you, our Disney cruise got canceled because it was March 2020. Man, I'm gonna need you to help us get back.
I got you.
All right. So look, this has been Reggie Key, motivational speaker, author, and host of Inkwell's Spoken Common, Genius, Uncommon Destiny. And this has been my genius guest, Fernando Leonard. And it is my uncommon cue to unlock the genius in you.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at InkwellSpoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.